This panel. So to begin with is Dr. Suma Singh. She is the Registrar Academics at Mount Carmel College. In many ways, this panel was triggered in some sense by the fact that Mount Carmel College, for 75 years, a women's college, is now turning co-educational from June. So in many ways, this panel was triggered by the backlash that we have got from the alumni and thought it made sense to have this conversation. So that's why Dr. Suma Singh has come here. We also have Professor Etienne, who has been a very, very admired, much loved, much revered professor of English in St. Joseph's College. He's here not just because he's a very, very admired, much loved, much revered professor of English in St. Joseph's College. He's here not just because he's a very articulate and intelligent man, but also because St. Joseph started as an all-boys college and has only in 1970 become an all-girl, a co-educational institution. And he's here to give us some insight about that transition and what it means. If one of the reasons we go to college or send our children to college is to ensure that they become independent, empowered individual, and a very major part of that empowerment, not the only, but maybe a major part of that empowerment comes from a professional identity. And so it made sense for me to include Shamita in this conversation because she is the VP HRD for Infosys that not only operates in India but globally and is a massive recruiter of men and women. Another interesting thing about Shamita is that she did her undergraduate in an all-girls college and then went on to do her higher studies, master's, MBA, I think, from a co-educational institution. And now she recruits men and women. And I thought it'll be interesting to get her perspective on what the percentage of recruitment is and whether the women that she's recruiting are different if they come from a same-sex institution or a co-ed one. So that's the logic of this conversation. I also want to set some boundaries on this. One of the things we are not doing is to look at the impact on society because that is a whole different ballgame and a much bigger subject, even though I acknowledge that one of the major responsibilities that all teachers have is to see how what we do in the classroom has an impact on society. But that conversation is not what we are talking about here. And although this conversation was triggered by the decision that Mount Carmel management has taken, this conversation is not really about Mount Carmel. I just want you to keep that in mind. It is about co-educational colleges, co-educational spaces, and its impact on women and in the teaching methodology. So with that, let me also talk a little bit about the structure. So I thought maybe we'll have a little bit of a conversation here. I'd like to trigger some thoughts for the three panelists. We'll have a little bit of a conversation so you can get to know what their viewpoints is going to be like. And then maybe we'll open it for some insightful, intelligent questions from our dear panels, from our audience, and see where that conversation goes. And then we will wrap it up in about 45 to 50 minutes. I think that's the structure we will follow and maybe end with a kind of sum up one-liner from each of the panelists. If that's okay, we'll get going. So, Dr. Suma, let me start with you. How did you come up with this? Okay, I must also make the disclaimer that none of them would be representing the official statement of their colleges. Let me just make that very clear. They are here as engaged stakeholders in the field of education and in society. So they are not making this as an official statement for the colleges that they are coming from or the institution that they have come from. Let me make that also quite clear. Okay, so let's start. What, in your opinion, is the reason and the rationale behind Mount Carmel turning Coed?
Okay. It's not that this was a decision taken out of the blue. This is a conversation that has been happening for quite some time in the institution. In 2016, the institution actually decided to open up the postgraduate programs for boys. It was something that was carried in newspapers in a big way, but we didn't make much headway in that because somewhere we were not able to the public perception of this being an all-women's college did not go away so easily. So the inflow of boys even into the postgraduate programs was very, very limited. Now, I think what the management or what triggered the management to think there is a need to take a drastic measure and open up all the programs for the boys was, we are in a phase of transition, to be very honest. 1948, when the institution started its journey, I think the context at that particular point was you need to ensure that education reaches to the most vulnerable, marginalized section, that was the women. That was the rationale of having an all-women's college. And I think that would be the rationale for all-women's institution across India in those times. And after 75 years, when we look back, I think we have made a difference. We have made a difference in terms of ensuring at least the first generation learners came. There were exceptional stories that have been scripted in the 75 years. And we have achieved the primary objective that we set out in 1948. Now, it's a period of change, largely because there are certain circumstances which are beyond the reach of or control of the institution. The ecosystem in which we operate has drastically changed. Education has become highly commercialized. We are facing intense competition from corporates which have got into higher education space in a bigger way. And the very nature of programs that need to be curated and offered in the coming years is also going to change. So, given the fact that the education space is going to be subject to major changes, the whole idea of an all-women's institution did not hold good when we had to plan for our academic progression in the coming years. Not to say it doesn't have weight even now, it does have, but if you are looking at getting into spaces which probably require a fair enough blend of both boys and girls in the classroom, this was the right time for us to make the transition, because we are hoping that we will become a university in the near future. And as a university, we would like to have diversity on our campus. And for that, this move became inevitable in 2024. The second reason, I think, is also because societies have changed. Ma'am will be able to tell, the corporate is changing. Today, we need to empower our students, not just with the best of quality education, but also empower them in terms of their confidence, in their ability, their mindsets and attitude to survive in any workspaces. Not to say that Carmelites did not do that earlier, but today we feel there is a need to have a campus which is more diverse and inclusive in both the ways. And for that, there was a need to bring in the balance in terms of the gender that was there on campus. Of course, there could be issues. We know our campus has always been a safe space for our students, but we as an institution, we do realize that we stand committed to ensure the safety, irrespective of which gender it is, but we believe this is a decision taken for the best of the institution and the best of the student community. That is the two prime reasons, I would say, why we have made this decision.
So, is this on? Is it on? Okay. So the thing is that, a full disclosure, I am myself a teacher from Mount Carmel, and there's been a lot of backlash about, how much people have disliked this decision. What occurred to me is that, why is it such a conversation when an all-boys institution turns co-ed? It is called inclusion. But when a girls' college turns co-ed, it isn't. It becomes a sort of a marring of safety. So I just wanted to turn to Professor Etienne now and ask, is there a difference? Is there a difference in what happened at Joseph's and what is happening in the classrooms right now in how you teach women and how you teach men? Has that been a factor that you acknowledge in your classroom? What are your thoughts?
Thank you for that introduction first, and thanks for everything else. To respond to what you have been asking, let me just take a little bit of a kind of a lineage rather than a history of co-educational spaces, including that of St. Joseph's. St. Joseph's in particular, for the experience has been rather unusual in the sense that right from the 1940s, we've been admitting women. They were admitted as special cases, especially when certain needs were to be met. But the fact remained that minority men were supposed to receive an education from this. They were particularly keen on looking at Catholic, Christian, and other minority communities. Boys from these communities would get an education. It was no doubt that that is how it began. But very quickly, by the 1970s, it was quite different. The complexion and the profile of each of these experiences earlier as a boys' college or as a men's college had completely changed by the 1970s, because we began to admit regularly women across the board. Right. I think by 2000, by now, the complexion of the colleges shifted again. In terms of actual numbers, certain courses, certain programs have more women than they have men. Classic example are the English studies courses that we run, where there are more women who are involved with both the courses that they take and also the departments that they are part of. So this demographic that we are talking about is a slightly different experience in what I have been through, at least, not necessarily in St. Joseph's alone. My response to this other question, which is, will it change if there is an all-male institution drawing women, or vice versa? I think there will be change. There's no doubt that there will be a difference, and that difference will be most certainly felt in one sense. What is special about a women's college turning into an all gender college, would be the fact that we have been thinking of women's colleges as necessarily safe spaces for women, which is how probably the stakeholders, particularly parents who send their children to these colleges, often perceive it as. But that is, for me, the analogy I often have is the analogy that works with what I often think about is translation. From English studies, we are looking at translated works. We often talk about what we have lost in translation, right? We rarely talk about what is gained by translation. And that, in some sense, is probably the kind of shift that needs to be, that would need to be experienced, that would be experienced as we go along. So I think much will be also gained by making something co-educational, because I think it'll be a kind of a new teaching learning experience for a whole lot of people. It will be a different kind of delivery that you will need to pay attention to. Well, I think we must have to clearly commit ourselves to the kind of commitments that we have had for women's empowerment and the places that they necessarily are part of. Right? So I think for me, the shift will be one of difference rather than one that is going to be marked by a certain kind of value judgment on whether it's good, bad, or that kind of a thing. Right?
So, Professor, before I let you go, one more question for you. And it's this, that, almost all co-educational colleges or universities were originally for men and are actually run by men. It'll be interesting to see what happens when a co-education space is primarily run by women, as Mount Carmel will be. So my question to you is this, that when you have a mixed class of multiple genders in your class, do you accommodate consciously the various perspectives that come or various experiences that come? And how do you stop yourself from, let's say, mansplaining?
I won't explain that last word because I really don't know how to explain that. But let me point out to the fact that that there is a complex demographic that is going to emerge from this. Okay? And I think it is incumbent on teachers and other stakeholders, and including administrators, to make an effort to make this a gender equal, gender just, gender sensitive experience, if not only an important location. I think it is important also to because of the awareness that we have and because of the commitments that we make, that this necessarily will have to find its process within whatever we are doing on an everyday kind of basis. I think there is a definite need for us to be that much more gender just about the kind of language that we use, if that is what you are talking about, because I don't think that word deserves any explanation. It's sort of self-explanatory, right, in that sense. But I think there is a certain deliberate attempt that one needs to make in terms of choosing the vocabulary that needs to be done, and that's because of a certain kind of consciousness. I mean, that will arise because of the fact that it is mixed as well. So you're no longer getting away with what you can be saying. It's not that something that anyway we should be doing. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, that's true. I think very often we find that we need to relearn our language. Things that appeared so funny maybe 30, 40 years ago is we watch something like Mind Your Language and think, what am I laughing at? So we do have to relearn our language. We talk about inclusion and, diversity. And I think I'm going to address my next question to you, Shamita. How do you prevent yourself from tokenism?
Yeah. Thanks, Sahana. Thanks for actually inviting me here. I am usually on corporate panels. I think this is the first time I'm on a truly diverse panel of thoughts, and appreciate that. So providing the corporate perspective, I think something like this, which is a kind of, I would use the term backward integration, so to speak, of the diversity agenda that we are actively pursuing in organizations today, and it is becoming a hot topic. It is a hot topic already, because we see that women fall off the ladder in the middle somewhere, and that is for various reasons, and we usually attribute it to marriage and children and conventional gender roles and family. My personal view is slightly different because I have been in a corporation, a very large global corporation like Infosys for a very long time, about 20 years, and I feel that it's far more nuanced than that. I think it is also to do with some of the tokenism that goes with the diversity agenda. It is not about holding events. It's not just about holding events. Events are important to talk about it. But it is the day-to-day that actually makes a lot of difference, which is things like mansplaining, being in a table where the majority, you could be, there have been many, many instances where I was the only woman on the table, right? Which
which you kind of don't even think about because you kind of, you've grown up with that. But as we get more aware of the issues, in fact, I am probably in the wrong age group to even completely understand what it means for the next generation. So I feel that if we are able to bring in this awareness right from college and even before of the fact that there are differences in the way men and women approach careers or approach workspaces because of years of conditioning, then it's just sort of some of the job is done, and we are not having to teach women that you have to ask when you want something. Men ask for promotions when they're 60% ready. That's a known statistic. Women apparently ask for promotions when they're 120% ready. That there, fantastic data that tells you that there is a whole lot of work that needs to be done there. And I think if it can start at the educational level, our jobs are easier.
I'll just borrow that mic. So while on recruitment, I know that Mount Carmel has had a fabulous record of placements. Do you think that this record will continue with an co-education? Will that get affected? What's your thought?
Should I give an honest answer?
Yes, absolutely. What other ways there?
We've had exceptional placement record for the last few years, but to be very honest, we have seen a dip also in the last few years. The reason primarily is because it could be a lot to do with the quality of input that is coming in. First. Secondly, it could also be to do with the way the classroom delivery is happening, the syllabus, multiple factors could be at play. One of the feedback that we have got from the companies is, yes, because of the diversity issues, they would love to walk into an all-women's college and recruit, but there seems to be a mismatch with regard to the skill sets the students have and what the corporate want. I'm not telling this is because of the gender, but this is a general feedback that we have had. The move to become a Coed, will this have an impact on the placement? Probably in the short run, it will have an impact because a lot of companies were coming to us largely because we were all women and it made sense for them to recruit from an all-women's college. But in the long term, we believe that our move is going to have a positive impact because we will be able to curate programs which will be probably much in requirement as per the market standards. We would also be able to relook into the way the classroom delivery is happening. As Sir said, we need to be much more I'm not saying we were not competent, but we would now need to reskill, relearn, upgrade ourselves because we are now looking at a much diverse crowd in the classrooms. The way in which the classroom dynamics is going to work out is going to be very different, which means our students' skill sets and attitudes are hopefully going to be much better in terms of their employability. So, short run, yes, it might not be great news for us because companies would love to come to us because of the all-women tag. But in the long run, we are very positive that this is a right move that we are making. And it would be something, a win-win for both the gender who are going to be there in our campus.
So I'll ask one question. And I hope to get a response from all three of you, starting with Shamita, then Suma, and then Etienne. I'm just following the order in which we are sitting. After which I will open this to our audience for their questions. If you will raise your hands, I'll bring the mic to you. Or you've got, okay. So let me just ask my question here. And that is to do with the whole idea of so-called single-sex educational spaces. Given the conversations today, do you think that all girls or an all boys, as we understood it through biology, is a dated conversation? That there is a whole spectrum, and would a co-educational space in that sense open it wider to make every individual young student come to terms with whatever identity they choose to have and to explore that through the 3 or 4 years of undergraduate study. Shamita, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the West has moved away from that, and we have a few vestiges left here. I believe this conversation is perhaps dated. I mean, we are grappling, of course, with brand identity. I think from what I understand from both the situations. So the brand identity is really a function of we have to work around the brand and transform it, and there are many ways to do it, I'm sure. But the actual experience of students, if we get down to that, and then experience of people in the workplace, with fluid identities. With, as you said, students finding themselves and being far more self-aware than we were actually when we were growing up. We have to move on from this conversation.
Suma?
For me, the whole idea of an all girls, all boys is a Victorian age legacy which doesn't hold good in the 21st century at all. Because when I had to make a choice for my boy, I was very clear that it will be a Coed, because I don't think so. Children, irrespective of the age, need to go through spaces which are secluded, because it's that regular, interaction, the conversations, that is what contributes you to become a sensible, rational male or female. And the kind of inhibitions that we normally see within all girls in particular, because I'm not sure of the all boys, but in the all girls, the inhibitions, the fear, that is something that you wouldn't see in a co-ed space. So in the 21st century, the idea of isolation, seclusion doesn't hold good. And we are looking at a society which is highly fluid in terms of gender identity. So why is it that the seclusion should still hold good? For me, it is co-ed is the future.
Professor Etienne, your views?
Since I've had the longest experience being in a co-ed educational institution, I would definitely support co-ed institutions. And for me, I think the primary focus of all these things is that we need to understand that college is also an encounter with people. And we would be cutting one kind of encounter away if it was a single-sex institution, right? It's also about being involved with the experience of being students, of being scholars, of being part of an educational process, which I think includes an understanding of the social in every sense of the term. And therefore, there could be the danger in single-sex institutions as of now of insularity. There could be. I'm not saying that they are of insularity. The second dimension for me, I think that for which I support co-educational spaces is also because of the fact that it offers an opportunity to consistently reinvent from what has been, especially in contexts where single-sex institutions have already been there, right? And then that the newer commitments for more consciously engaged in would be probably very useful, if not more than that, all the time. Yeah.
So I can almost see the cynicism in some of your faces. So let me just open this to the audience by asking you, the audience, whether gender issues and feminist issues are the same. Because, some of you may say it isn't. And that women need a separate nurturing, at least up to the undergrad state in any case. So with that, I open it. I think the lady there, yeah. Just go on.
Yeah. Thank you for each of your perspectives and for this topic. So I'm a proud ex-Carmelite. I'm also an alumnus from Excel, and there's a reference to Joseph coming up. So there's, I did PYEJ at Mounts at a time when only women's colleges offered PYEJ. That was only Mounts and MMKRV. And I had grown up in CBSE co-education till grade 12. I also switched from science to arts to PYEJ. And in the final year, I got a chance to go to BITS Pilani for Oasis. And we were a group of 20 girls from Mounts who went. And we traveled along with 20 Josephites. And in the group of 20 Josephites, there were 18 boys and 2 girls. And of course, the group from Mounts was 20 girls. And while I believe very strongly in co-education, and I've been a teacher since then, I can't help wondering whether if I had been in Joseph's, it would have actually reduced my chance of representing my college by 1/10.
So may I ask what the question is?
I believe that there are certain stages in your life when identity is being formed where it actually worked very much in my favor to be in Mounts for those 3 years, to do PYEJ. The cultural environment was so rich, and it's similar to the kind of cultural environment you have at the BIC here now. And my exposure to extracurricular activities, literary activities, all that happened because I'd taken a course where it was not considered a distraction or a waste of time from a very convergent path, but bringing in different experiences was part of your education. And the richness of that came to me from Mounts, from doing PYEJ in Mounts. And I do believe that representation makes a difference, because maybe if Mounts had been a co-educational institution, then maybe I would not have been in that group of 20. I'm from Hamsa's batch, so just to give you a sense of it.
Ma'am, can I just answer that?
Of course.
I have to confess, this is one of the concerns the students have raised, that the kind of platform that they got in the institution in terms of representing the institution and even the placement opportunities would get affected when we go co-ed. That has been a concern raised, but from the management point of view, they have told no, we will ensure that there is a equal representation when it comes to whether it's the cultural, even representation in the student council. Students were very apprehensive that the students' council will be completely overtaken by boys. So that is an assurance the management has given. And also this is a very slow process. We are not looking at 50-50 on campus in 2024. We're probably looking at just 20% or 25% boys in the first 1 or 2 years, and then gradually it will be increased, the proportion. But your point is very valid, because it resonates even with the students of current students.
Thank you.
Your response,
Yeah, just one little small thing. I don't want to make this part of a narrative, because I think we do have, I generally acknowledge the fact that there is going to be a challenge before us when you move from one kind of a experience to another, which is, I think, very definitive. And the challenge might be that of representation, which is really the major challenge. But that's precisely what I think one needs to commit ourselves for, that this representation will be equal and just. And to ensure that there is this very important understanding that we must have of what is equal and what is, which I think would be important for us to guarantee all the time, right? It is some way, this is not just fair play, but, a certain way by which we could represent people across the board. When we had fewer numbers of women, we had a separate reserved category, especially for our college general elections, right? There would so that there is some guarantee of more than sufficient representation, just more than sufficient in representation. There is enough, I think. So I think there is a need for us, as I said, to commit to a different processes of delivery, this whole thing to be delivered into play. It's not simple. I do grant that it's going to be very complex, given the history of institutions, as a case may be, right? But there is a need for us to make this shift. That is something that
whether we like it or not, this change is coming. I have a question.
Okay. Vikram?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question first, and then I'll give it to you. Sorry. Question for Shamita and then Dr. Suma. Shamita, in your experience in HR, have you seen a marked difference between women who have come from all-girls colleges, who have come from Coed colleges, in terms of just basic ability to deal with situations that arise in the corporate world? That's number one. And for Dr. Suma, the question is, as such an old and established institution like Mount goes towards Coed, do you see a risk of women losing the right to set the agenda, if you might? If it was in an all-girls school, a lot of the curriculum, in just the way of life, the micro decisions are geared towards women. And is there a risk you see that, again, then the agenda gets set for the men?
So Shamita, will you take the question first and then you, Suma?
Yeah, thanks.
You can go next.
So, Vikram, right? Sahana was also kind of discussing this question with me earlier, and we don't really track this in the sense that we are not really looking at whether we are hiring from all girls colleges or Coed colleges. But there are unconscious perceptions and biases that creep in, which is true across a spectrum of stuff. But thinking about it, I think one of the things is the positive one, that if we have to fill a certain quota, so to speak, of a certain mandatory levels of hiring of women, then we would know that if we went to girls' colleges, we would get that number. So, which is why Suma's saying that when it's converting now, corporations have said that they may not come as much. So that's one part. The other part is, I think, from where I have been looking at recruitment, there is, we hire mostly engineers, right? And we hire, and engineering colleges are notoriously, they are Coed, but they are male-centric, so like it's 15% or 10% or something like that all of us have experienced. There is a perception that if we have to hire liberal arts people, that we would go to the women's colleges, because there is a perceived bias that they are better equipped, they are designed, and their curriculum is biased towards liberal arts courses. So there is that, and so there is that kind of underlying perception that men don't necessarily engage in liberal arts education in the country. I'm only talking about the country, and I think we know that all, deep down, and that's where we would find most of the liberal arts people. So that's all. I mean, there is nothing more at a hiring level that I can see.
Suma?
Yeah. Vikram, will there be no voice for the female? Is that...
Or does it diminish? Yeah.
Does it diminish? Okay, the first point is, I think Mrs. Das made a reference to this. We are a women-led organization, unlike a lot of other institutions. So I think the fact that we are women-led will ensure that the voice of the females is still heard. The management is completely all women. Majority of the leadership team is also women. So I don't think so that will get diluted. My concern would be, honestly, with regard to the kind of programs we may be offering, because the so-called liberal art programs or certain programs, even in the biological sciences, which had a very high level of admission from the females, these over a period of time probably could get I wouldn't say completely they will be out from the programs, but these are the programs which might get affected, because the management would also want to look at programs which are more, invest in programs which have better returns. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? So there may be certain programs which have been curated over a period, largely because there's a huge demand from the girl students, that I fear could slowly move out of the spectrum, is my fear. I'll just give you one example. I think we are the only institution currently offering a BSc Home Science. And we are struggling already in terms of the numbers. Now with the decision to go Coed, in all likelihood, this program might be in the last phase. So certain programs which were earlier curated exclusively for the female audience, that I fear would see the last phase in the coming years. But I'm assured of myself and the management that the female voice will not disappear on the campus. We will still be loud and heard.
Your question?
So I don't have a question. I want to share a couple of perspectives on this whole discussion. First, a disclaimer, and that is it's really difficult to tear yourself away from the fact that this is about Mount Carmel. This conversation started because of this change that happened in Mount Carmel. So I find it difficult to distance myself from that. Having said that, to me it appears that there are two compelling reasons why there should be an endeavor to bring more colleges into this gender agnostic space. The first is that this educational space that we are talking about is a reflection of society at large. You can't have a space that is exclusively one gender when society is not like that. So it is an unnatural situation for you to have a space exclusively for women and expect that those women will turn out into balanced individuals in their dealings with men, and conversely, for men to be able to balance themselves against women. So I think in that sense, there is a compulsion almost, or a very strong argument to create these gender agnostic spaces. That's number one. Number two is that it is a fact, I think, I don't know, maybe you can correct me. My experience, having worked in a large multinational organization for many years, is that whether you're in an Indian organization or an American one, gender biases are a fact. And we need to work towards neutralizing that. And it has to start in college. And it has to start with the men who come into the college. So it's really important for men to be able to sit in an environment which is gender agnostic and see that that environment actually works well. Now, a big part of this responsibility sits with the faculty, the management, the people who develop strategy inside the college. If that is successful, then it can only help neutralize the space, which today is deeply, deeply weighed against women. So these are two, in my view, compelling reasons why you should go for these spaces. There is, however, one small doubt that I have about why maybe it is not such a great idea. It's like this, that if you look at the total educational space in India, chances are you will find an overwhelming number of people who are being educated are men. It can happen for multiple reasons. One might be that I'm a poor family, I don't have enough money to send both my children to college, so the boy goes to a college, my girl stays at home. Such is life in India. But when you have an environment which is exclusively for women, it offers greater opportunities for those women who might otherwise not have gone to college at all. So this perhaps is one argument that one could have for maintaining a larger proportion of opportunities for women. Now, if we could be guaranteed that the total number of opportunities available for women is not going to diminish, and I think it's a tall claim, because Mount Carmel has got X. Again, I'm going back to Mount Carmel, has got X number of opportunities for students. If even 20% of them go to men, there is only 80% left for women. So in that sense, the endeavor the society must have to balance out the opportunities for men and women, I think that there is a problem over there. Because as a recruiter, I have found, especially in the engineering space, you don't find women. It's not because women are stupid. It's just that they didn't go to college. If you look at the better engineering colleges in India, the proportion of men versus women is disgraceful. My sense of it is that because Mount Carmel has been so progressive and so successful in placement, will there be a loss of placement opportunities for women? So, two compelling arguments for, one doubt against.
So just an observation of what you told, the first comment or observation that you had. This is, one of my students is doing her PG dissertation on menstrual leave. And so when we were talking about this in the classroom, she made an observation that in her undergrad, where she came from a Coed college in Delhi, she said, I wouldn't have had this conversation with men, because the boys in my classmates, my friends, were sensitive to the kind of problem that the women go through during the menstrual time. But if the boys are not a part of the education system, or they are not my colleagues or my friends, they wouldn't be sensitive to what I was going through. So I felt that particular point, it was important that we have co-ed spaces, because there are certain issues related to purely gender, which they would become more sensitive to. The second point that you raised, I completely agree with you, that yes, it is going to be a concern about the placements, particularly for the girl students, at least in the initial years, because as you rightly said, you know better, it's always the boys who walk away probably with the best of job opportunities. But I feel, given the reputation of the institution in terms of the kind of graduates that we have come out with over the years, and we will continue to do that, our students, irrespective of whether they are male or female, will still have a good chance. And ma'am will agree, a Carmelite always comes out with probably the best of attitude and communication skills, and more so if you're a female Carmelite. So they will still do well. But yes, it is something that we need to be sensitive, and we need to ensure that that balance of opportunities is guaranteed. Otherwise, it would be unfair, and it would be a disservice to the legacy that we have worked for so many years.
Can we take just one more question, and then we will wrap it up? You, and then I think you also. Yeah. So maybe two. Yeah. Can I request you to keep it brief?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so while I agree that, co-ed spaces should be the aim, or you said it is from Victorian era and so on. What do you think are the hurdles, and why hasn't it happened? That is a question. And also, what sort of mindset change can actually accentuate this process, can boost this process of, more and more co-eds coming up? Also, adding to what he said, cultural shift among parents who are going to send their kids, if that doesn't happen parallelly, and you come up with this co-ed space, then is that a disbalance which will prove, difficult for those women?
So his observation was that the first part was, he said more of co-ed space, but I think that's what we are heading to, right?
Why hasn't it happened so far?
Why hasn't it happened so far?
Surely that is a question to be asked at whichever point it happens, because it was this way, but should be, why not now?
Is the tipping point.
Yeah.
I think for us as an institution, it was the acceptance that the prime objective of the institution of taking education to women has been achieved. And now it is time for us to ensure that it's more of a holistic campus culture that we're going to develop. As Sir rightly pointed out, you cannot look at a space which is secluded, all male, all female, because society is not like that. So I think that was the prime factor. The second question where you raised concern about...
there isn't a parallel mindset change among parents.
Families.
And they have education sending to, let's say, Mount Carmel because it has become a Coed. Then
I'm sure that challenge is also something that we are going to face.
Professor Etienne, you were mentioning something about this. Yeah.
The point I was making earlier, as I would make again, is the fact that educational institutions are supposed to do just that. The aim of all education is to make that change in cultural mindsets, and you call it the cultural shift. If the experience is not practical, or if it doesn't happen in practice, the genuine shifts that are internalized shifts in that sense, in the so-called cultural shifts that you call them, may not really work itself out, right? There is going to be, I'm going to be very, very honest about, there is going to be immense challenge in this particular area, particularly regarding the voice of the women, the placement for women, and all those things. Well, I think, but it's important for administrations and leadership to find structures and possibilities where this inequality, can be balanced out in some things. The more valorous possibility is the fact that this was going to make it far more cosmopolitan than it has ever been. That is an important agenda that could be searched after. That could be the quest that probably the leadership at Mount Carmel is actually thinking about. It would be more inclusive, get more people in play, right? So I think educational processes are meant to make that cultural shift. So they have to bring people in for that to happen, right?
Nishka, you had something to say.
Okay.
Let's make that the one.
Oh, okay. When St. Stephen's got caught, they blamed me for it because money was responsible, and so the Tharivans and the Damodarans were furious that they couldn't any longer walk around in their lungies inside St. Stephen's College. That is what I'm trying to get at is it was less a worry of placement, because women wouldn't have got jobs and couldn't have stolen their jobs anyway. So I'm just curious now that when the boys want to come in here, will the girls feel that, we're not being allowed to be girly enough? Have we lost our privacy? Will the boys feel that we have to be on good behavior? Do they want to come to a college where they can't walk around in their lungies? I mean, St. Stephen's has, I think, got over its hatred for me. Shashi and all have accepted that, okay, it had to happen. But I'm just curious about whether...
So if I may just respond to you, Nishka. So it's this, that it'll happen for 2 minutes. After that, people are too lazy to wonder about what they are dressed up and what they 2 days, yes. After that, you just go about doing your work. So I think these are important questions. I think we are not looking for answers here. We are just raising the question because that's the beginning of thought. And that's the objective of a panel discussion of this kind. We are going to resist change, but we have to ask ourselves, do we resist this because we don't like change or because there is a real problem that needs to be addressed? And I think raising the questions has done a bit of that. Because even spaces that think are gender agnostic or have diversity and inclusion, when you dig deep, you find holes and hypocrisies in those spaces also. It's a much larger conversation. It is something that society needs to grapple, not just in Bangalore, in India, but I think globally. In different cultures, there are different degrees and different definitions. For example, I'm very intrigued that our audience member as well as Shamita here both talked about recruitment in engineering terms. It's almost hierarchizing professional courses from liberal arts. And that's not necessarily true. In a world of AI, it's the liberal arts that can't be substituted. So, we don't know what tomorrow will hold. We can only address today, and we look forward to an inclusive, just, happy society for men, women, and everybody in between. So with that, let's come to the end of the formal part of this panel discussion, and let's carry this discussion further into the corridor and into our homes and into our hearts and mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.